I want to speak to the part of you that knows deep down that you are not created for mediocrity. You were not placed on this earth just to survive, to exist from one day to the next, wondering if your life will ever change. No, you were created for purpose, on purpose, by a God who does nothing by accident. There comes a time in every person's life when the ordinary no longer satisfies. You begin to feel something stirring in your spirit. You look around at the routines, the habits, the cycles, and suddenly you realize that you're outgrowing the space you've been living in. It feels uncomfortable, but it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of transition. You're being called higher, and I want you to know, with every fiber of your being, that this restlessness you feel, this hunger, this spiritual tension, it's not the end of you. It's the beginning of a new level. It's a divine signal that God is shifting you from ordinary to extraordinary. Now, when God begins to move you, it doesn't always look like progress at first. Often, it looks like pressure. It feels like you're being squeezed, stretched, and sometimes even stripped. But let me tell you this, pressure is the precursor to promotion. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Greatness is forged in the fire. And if you're feeling the heat right now, it's because God is refining you, preparing you for a stage, a calling, a mission that only the transformed version of you can fulfill. The first sign that God is taking you to the next level is disruption. Yes, disruption. Because before God elevates you, He agitates you. He shakes the foundation you've been standing on, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you stronger, higher, deeper. Think about every major turning point in Scripture. Moses was disrupted from a life of comfort in Pharaoh's palace. David was disrupted from tending sheep to being chased by a jealous king. Esther was disrupted from obscurity into destiny. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And sometimes that means disturbing your peace to deliver your purpose. You might be experiencing closed doors, unexpected changes, or relationships that are breaking apart. And while it hurts, understand that God closes doors not to punish you, but to protect you. He removes people from your life not to isolate you, but to consecrate you. He's not breaking you down. He's building you up. That discomfort you feel is heaven's construction zone, and the blueprint is bigger than you can imagine. The second sign that God is taking you to the next level is divine isolation. Now, I know that doesn't sound exciting. No one likes to feel alone. But there are seasons when God pulls you away from the noise, the crowd, and even from what's familiar, so He can speak to you clearly. It's in the quiet place that destinies are revealed. Look at Jesus. Before He began His public ministry, He was led into the wilderness, not by the enemy, but by the Spirit. Why? Because the next level requires a level of clarity, strength, and intimacy with God that can't be developed in the spotlight. If you feel like you're in a season where you've been cut off or misunderstood, don't be discouraged. Sometimes God hides you to preserve you. He's developing your character, purifying your motives, and increasing your dependence on Him. The higher you go, the more isolated it can feel, but also the clearer your connection to heaven becomes. You're not being abandoned, you're being set apart. The third sign is accelerated growth. You'll start to notice that things are changing rapidly. Your thoughts, your habits, your spirit. You're no longer comfortable with what used to satisfy you. Conversations that once entertained you now bore you. Environments that used to feel like home now feel suffocating. Why? Because your spirit is outgrowing the atmosphere around you. When God is getting ready to elevate you, He increases your appetite for excellence, purpose, and truth. This growth isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. You begin to pray differently. You worship more sincerely. Your hunger for God's Word intensifies. You find yourself leaning into obedience even when it's inconvenient. You start releasing what's toxic. Don't fear the pace. When God is in it, He can do in 1 year what you couldn't do in 10. He can open doors that no man can shut. He can cause you to rise in influence, in authority, in impact, not because of your resume, but because of His anointing. Remember, when David was promoted, he didn't go through the typical route. He went from forgotten shepherd boy to celebrated king. That's what favor looks like. It skips the line. The fourth sign that God is taking you to the next level is divine resistance. You will face opposition. You will encounter warfare. But it's not a sign that you're failing. It's evidence that you're advancing. The enemy does not attack what doesn't threaten him. If all hell is breaking loose against you, it's because heaven has declared a breakthrough for you. Resistance is part of the journey. It refines your faith, tests your perseverance, and strengthens your resolve. The enemy will try to use discouragement, distractions, and delays to get you to quit. But what he doesn't realize is that every battle you face is training for the territory you're about to take. Every Goliath is confirmation that a crown is nearby. Don't back down in the face of adversity. Rise up. Know who you are. You are chosen, called, and covered. You are not ordinary. You are extraordinary, not because of your strength, but because of the God who lives in you. You were not born to blend in. You were born to stand out. And yes, the journey to extraordinary comes with a cost, but the reward is eternal. Now hear me, being extraordinary isn't about fame, wealth, or worldly success. It's about fulfilling the purpose for which you were born. It's about using your life to glorify God in such a way that people look at you and see His power, His love, and His grace. It's about leaving a legacy that echoes in eternity. And that starts not when you arrive, but when you say yes, even in the small things. So if you're in a season where things don't make sense, where you're feeling stretched, isolated, or tested, don't lose heart. It means God is doing something. It means He's moving you. It means your name is being whispered in rooms you haven't entered yet. It means you're being prepared for something that's beyond your comprehension. Keep walking, keep trusting, keep praising. Don't wait until you see the full picture. Thank God now, because the promotion is already in progress. The shift is already happening. The oil is already flowing. This is not the time to quit. This is not the time to shrink. This is your moment to rise, to believe again, to dream again, to fight for the calling that God placed on your life before you were even formed in your mother's womb. You may have started ordinary, but you serve an extraordinary God. And when He steps in, everything changes. He takes the weak and makes them strong. He takes the broken and makes them whole. He takes the forgotten and puts them center stage. You are not who you were. You are being transformed. This is your metamorphosis. The caterpillar must go through the cocoon, but when it emerges, it no longer crawls, it soars. And you, my friend, are about to soar. So walk boldly, pray fervently, serve faithfully, love deeply, and never, ever doubt that God is with you. He is for you, and if God is for you, who can be against you? From ordinary to extraordinary, that is your story. That is your testimony. That is your destiny. So step into it. The next level is waiting, and heaven is cheering you on. Disruption. The very word can sound negative, even threatening. It brings to mind instability, confusion, and uncertainty. And yet, in the hands of God, disruption is not destruction. It is divine redirection. It is one of the clearest signs that you are being prepared for something greater, something beyond what you could plan or imagine for yourself. God often uses disruption not to punish or harm us, but to shift us out of what is comfortable and into what is purposeful. Think about it. We are creatures of habit. We settle into routines, relationships, jobs, and lifestyles that feel safe, even if they are limiting. We get comfortable in the ordinary, and because comfort can be the enemy of growth, God sometimes has to step in and shake things up. He allows certain doors to close, certain people to walk away, certain plans to fail, not because He's abandoning us, but because He's aligning us with something better. In the Bible, disruption is a recurring theme in the lives of those God uses powerfully. Consider Moses. He was living a stable life in Midian as a shepherd. Then one day, God disrupted everything through a burning bush. That disruption led Moses to his destiny, delivering Israel from bondage. Or look at Joseph. His dreams of greatness were disrupted by betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. But through it all, God was preparing him to become second in command over all of Egypt. David was disrupted too. He was pulled from the pasture where he was quietly tending sheep and thrust into a national crisis with a giant named Goliath. That one moment of divine disruption positioned him for kingship. And let's not forget the disciples, fishermen, and tax collectors, whose entire lives were turned upside down when Jesus said, "Follow me." They left everything behind, and that disruption changed the world. So, when your life starts to feel unstable, when things fall apart, when doors close, when your plans are interrupted, don't panic. Pause and pray. Ask yourself, is this God shifting me? Could it be that what feels like a breakdown is actually a setup for a breakthrough? Sometimes God has to take away the lesser so we can make room for the greater. Divine disruption often comes in ways that don't make sense to our natural minds. That's why it's so easy to misinterpret it as rejection or failure. But God's ways are higher than our ways. He sees the end from the beginning. What looks like a detour to us is a direct path in His divine plan. What looks like a closed door might be His hand guiding us away from danger and toward destiny. It's important to remember that not all discomfort is bad. Sometimes growing pains are necessary. When a seed is buried in the ground, it must break before it can sprout. The breaking is part of the birthing. So if your life feels like it's being broken apart, take heart. It might be because something new is being born through you. Divine disruption doesn't always mean dramatic change. Sometimes it's subtle. A restlessness in your spirit. A discomfort in places where you once felt at home. A quiet sense that God is calling you to more. Don't ignore that feeling. That's God preparing you for elevation. In these moments, trust is key. You won't always see the full picture, but you can trust the one who holds the blueprint. Hold on to your faith. Keep seeking His face. What you thought was a breakdown may just be your breakthrough. What you thought was the end might be the beginning of a completely new chapter. So instead of resisting the disruption, embrace it. Lean into what God is doing. He's not trying to ruin your life. He's trying to rebuild it into something far greater. Divine disruption is not a curse. It is the clearest sign that God is taking you from ordinary to extraordinary. It's a season that many dread, a space of silence, separation, and sometimes loneliness. But in the hands of God, isolation is not abandonment, it's preparation. It's not punishment, it's positioning. When God is about to elevate someone, He often draws them away from the noise, the distractions, and the crowds. Not to diminish them, but to deepen them. Because before God reveals what's next, He often removes what's now. There's something sacred about isolation. It's a womb where God forms vision, identity, and destiny. If you're in a season where you feel cut off, hidden, or overlooked, don't despair. Heaven often hides what it's preparing to release. You're not forgotten. You're being formed. Look at the pattern throughout Scripture. God met Moses not in the palace, but on the backside of the desert. It was in the wilderness, away from people, away from distractions, that Moses encountered the burning bush and received his divine assignment. Moses' isolation wasn't the end. It was the beginning of his calling. David, too, was isolated. Before he was ever celebrated as a warrior or crowned as king, he was alone in the fields tending sheep. But it was there, in the quiet, away from the spotlight, that he learned to worship, to fight lions and bears, to trust God completely. His private victories in isolation prepared him for public battles on the battlefield. Even Jesus, before beginning his earthly ministry, was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, not by accident, but on purpose. He fasted, prayed, and faced temptation, alone. Yet it was there that he clarified his identity, resisted the enemy, and emerged with power. Isolation prepared Jesus for the revelation of his full authority and mission. So why does God use isolation? Because revelation requires stillness. You can't hear a whisper in the middle of a crowd. God often speaks in a still, small voice, and for you to hear it, he may need to remove some things and people that are drowning him out. Sometimes the greatest revelation comes when the noise dies down and the distractions are stripped away. In isolation, God clarifies your identity. When you're no longer defined by people's approval or affirmation, you begin to discover who you really are in Christ. You begin to understand that your worth is not tied to your position, your popularity, or your productivity, but to your identity as a child of God. That's a revelation that can only be grasped in the quiet. Isolation also reveals your dependency. It strips away the things and people you leaned on and forces you to lean fully on God. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it builds spiritual muscle. You learn to pray not out of routine, but out of desperation. You learn to hear God not through sermons alone, but through direct communion. Your relationship with him becomes real, raw, and unshakable. And finally, isolation refines your purpose. It's where dreams are tested, motives are purified, and assignments are confirmed. In isolation, God shows you not just what to do, but who you must become to carry it out. The next level requires a new version of you, stronger, wiser, more rooted in him. Isolation is the workshop where that version is built. So don't fear the hidden seasons. Don't rush to escape the silence. Embrace it. Use it. Let God do his deep work in you. The people who seem the most hidden today are often the ones God is preparing to reveal tomorrow. He's not hiding you to hold you back. He's hiding you to launch you forward. The cocoon may feel confining, but it's not your prison. It's your preparation. And when the time is right, the wings will unfold. Until then, trust the process. The revelation you receive in isolation will guide you through every challenge and elevate you into your divine purpose. When God is preparing to elevate you, the first signs don't always appear on the outside. They start deep within, before the doors open, before the opportunities arrive, before the world sees anything change. Your spirit begins to shift. Your mindset starts to mature. Your cravings for God intensify. You begin to feel things breaking off of you. Old patterns, old habits, old ways of thinking. It's a signal from heaven that you're being promoted. And that promotion begins with rapid inner growth. Growth is often unseen before it is revealed, like the roots of a tree digging deeper into the soil long before the branches stretch into the sky. So too your spiritual growth takes place beneath the surface. You may not feel like you're making progress by worldly standards, but spiritually something powerful is happening inside of you. One of the clearest signs of this spiritual promotion is an increased awareness of what no longer serves your purpose. Things that used to entertain you start to feel empty. Conversations that once interested you now feel shallow. Environments that once energized you begin to feel draining. Why? Because your spirit is evolving. God is expanding your capacity, and your old atmosphere can't contain the new version of you. You begin to hunger for more. More wisdom, more presence, more purpose. You find yourself craving time with God, not out of obligation, but out of desire. Prayer becomes more than just routine. It becomes relationship. Worship becomes more than just songs. It becomes surrender. The Bible no longer feels like a book. It becomes your daily bread. You are not just going through the motions. You are aligning with God on a deeper level. This inner transformation often brings clarity. Where there was once confusion, you begin to see things clearly. You discern motives, detect distractions, and sense divine timing in ways you never did before. You become more sensitive to the Spirit, more obedient to his nudges, and more resistant to compromise. You're no longer moved by hype, but by his voice. That is what spiritual promotion looks like. It's the maturity to choose purpose over popularity, obedience over convenience, and faith over fear. Don't mistake the absence of public recognition as the absence of progress. The inner work is the real work, and often God promotes you spiritually long before he promotes you publicly. Why? Because if your character doesn't grow with your calling, your gifting will take you to places your soul can't sustain. God loves you too much to elevate you before you're ready. This rapid inner growth may also bring discomfort. Growth always does. You may feel misunderstood, even by people who once felt close. You may feel isolated, even when you're surrounded. That's because elevation requires separation, not from people out of pride, but from distractions out of purpose. You're not better than others. You're simply being called to something higher, something holier. God is stretching your patience, refining your humility, increasing your endurance. He's teaching you to lead yourself before you lead others. He's deepening your roots so that when the winds of pressure and promotion come, you won't fall, you'll stand firm. And soon the internal growth will manifest externally. You'll walk in new opportunities with wisdom. You'll respond to challenges with grace. You'll carry authority not because of a title, but because of what you've overcome in secret. That's the kind of leader God is raising up in you. Not one who's just impressive on the outside, but one who is deeply grounded on the inside. So if you're experiencing this spiritual acceleration, don't resist it. Embrace it. It's not random. It's not coincidence. It's the hand of God growing you for where He's about to take you. Your rapid inner growth is not just for your benefit, it's for your impact. He is raising you to reflect His glory. Promotion is here, and it's starting from the inside out. Resistance, opposition, challenges. These aren't the signs we usually look for when seeking confirmation from God. We often associate ease and comfort with divine favor, but in reality, one of the most reliable signs that you are moving in the right direction, the direction of purpose, calling, and destiny, is that resistance shows up. And not just any resistance, spiritual, emotional, and circumstantial pushback that seems to come out of nowhere. Why? Because when you step into what God has called you to do, you automatically become a threat to the enemy. Too often we assume that difficulty means we've taken a wrong turn. But the truth is, the path to greatness is rarely smooth. The path to impact, influence, and intimacy with God is filled with friction. And that friction is not there to break you. It's there to build you. It is confirmation that you are advancing, that your steps are counting, that your presence is disrupting darkness. Throughout Scripture, we see a consistent pattern. Those whom God calls, the enemy opposes. When Moses was called to deliver Israel, Pharaoh responded with more oppression. When David was anointed to be king, he was chased, hunted, and hated. When Nehemiah was rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, he faced criticism, threats, and sabotage. And when Jesus stepped into his public ministry, all hell came against him, literally. If resistance is hitting your life, it may be because hell sees what heaven is releasing. The enemy is not intimidated by a complacent believer, but a child of God walking boldly in obedience. That's a problem for the kingdom of darkness. So if you're facing resistance, don't shrink back. Rise up. You're not doing something wrong. You're doing something right. Resistance also reveals areas that need strengthening. Just like muscles grow through tension and strain, your faith, endurance, and character are developed through resistance. It stretches your trust in God. It tests your perseverance. It deepens your prayer life. You begin to lean on Him, not because you have no other option, but because you realize He's your only true source of strength. The more resistance you face, the more refined you become. There's also a spiritual principle at play. The enemy fights hardest where you're most effective. If he can distract you, discourage you, or delay you, he can limit your impact. But when you recognize resistance as confirmation, you stop running from it and start pushing through it. You don't let it stop you, you let it shape you. It's important to remember that Jesus promised resistance would come. In John 16:33, he said, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." He never said the journey would be easy. When you're walking the path of obedience, you may face criticism from people who don't understand your calling. You may lose friends. You may encounter spiritual warfare that shakes you, but stay the course. Your obedience is building something eternal. Your persistence is shifting something in the atmosphere. What you're carrying is too important to give up now. So don't be discouraged when resistance comes. Rejoice, not because it's fun or easy, but because it means you're getting closer to breakthrough, closer to purpose, closer to destiny. The enemy doesn't attack what isn't advancing. Let that resistance remind you that you're aligned with heaven. Let it push you deeper into prayer, closer to God, and further into your calling. You're not retreating, you're rising, and every ounce of resistance is simply a sign you're on the right path. God has a way of choosing what the world overlooks. He delights in taking what is simple, plain, and seemingly insignificant and using it for something profound. That's his nature. He turns the ordinary into extraordinary, not so we can boast in our own strength or wisdom, but so his glory can be revealed through our lives. When people look at what you accomplish and know it couldn't have been done without divine help, that's when God gets the glory. The Bible is full of examples of God using ordinary people and situations to accomplish extraordinary purposes. Moses was a stuttering shepherd, yet God used him to deliver an entire nation. David was a teenage shepherd boy overlooked by his own family, but God anointed him king over Israel. Mary was a young girl from a small town, but she became the mother of the Savior of the world. And the disciples? Fishermen, tax collectors, common men, yet they turned the world upside down. God does not need your resume. He needs your yes. He doesn't require perfection, just obedience. And often, he chooses the least likely candidates so that the credit goes where it belongs, to him. That's why Paul wrote in Corinthians 1:27-29, God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, so that no one may boast before him. In other words, God is not impressed with human credentials. He's drawn to humility, faith, and availability. When you think of yourself as ordinary, you might disqualify yourself in your mind. You might say, I'm not educated enough. I'm too broken. I've made too many mistakes. But that's exactly the kind of person God uses. Your weakness is not a barrier to God. It's a bridge for his power. In fact, it's through your weakness that his strength is made perfect. What disqualifies you in the world's eyes qualifies you in the kingdom. God sees what others overlook. Where people see a fisherman, he sees a fisher of men. Where others see a barren woman, he sees the mother of a prophet. Where the world sees a prisoner, God sees a prime minister. When he looks at you, he doesn't just see your past, he sees your potential. And when you place your life in his hands, no matter how ordinary it may seem, he will do something extraordinary with it. But here's the key. It's not about being extraordinary for our own fame or recognition. It's about reflecting his glory. Every miracle, every breakthrough, every open door, every victory, it's not just for our benefit, it's for his name to be lifted high. When God turns your mess into a message, your test into a testimony, and your pain into purpose, people begin to see him through you. Your story, no matter how simple, matters. Your daily obedience, your small acts of faith, your silent sacrifices, they all count. God uses the ordinary moments, the mundane tasks, the quiet faithfulness behind closed doors to build a testimony that will one day be seen by many. So if you feel ordinary, take heart. You are in the perfect position for God to display his power. Stay faithful in the little things. Keep showing up. Keep believing. Keep trusting. What you consider small may be the very thing God uses to change a life, shift an atmosphere, or start a revival. God doesn't need you to be extraordinary. He just needs you to trust him with your ordinary. Because when you do, he breathes his power into it, and suddenly, what once looked insignificant becomes a vessel of impact and eternal purpose. And when that transformation happens, there will be no doubt. It wasn't by might, it wasn't by talent, it wasn't by chance. It was by his Spirit for his glory through your willingness. Often we search for a grand moment, the lightning bolt, the prophetic word, the big opportunity that will change our life forever. But God's promotions rarely begin in the spotlight. They begin in the secret place. They begin with small acts of obedience, daily choices to follow him even when no one is watching. If you want to go from ordinary to extraordinary, learn to be faithful in the small things, because that's where the journey begins. God watches how we handle the little tasks before he hands us larger ones. This isn't because he doubts us, but because he's training us. When Jesus taught his disciples about stewardship, he said in Luke 16:10, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." That principle is still true today. Big doors often swing on small hinges. Think about David. Before he ever stood before Goliath, he was simply delivering lunch to his brothers. A small, seemingly mundane act. But because he was faithful with that task, he ended up in the exact place he needed to be for his moment of destiny. If David had dismissed the assignment as beneath him, he would have missed the battlefield and the giant that would catapult him into national prominence. Or consider Ruth. She chose to stay with Naomi and work faithfully in the fields, gleaning leftovers. That small decision led her to meet Boaz and become part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. It wasn't a flashy beginning, but it was divinely orchestrated. Her willingness to serve quietly positioned her for a legacy that changed history. Small things matter to God: the way you treat people when you think they can't help you, the way you pray when no one is looking, the way you show up early, stay humble, and keep your heart pure even when it feels like no one notices. Sometimes the small acts of obedience are hard. Forgiving someone who hurt you, giving when it's inconvenient, staying quiet when you want to defend yourself, serving someone else's vision while waiting for your own. But it's in those quiet moments of surrender that God shapes our character and prepares us for influence. Your next level may not be waiting at the end of a spotlight. It may be hiding behind your current assignment. God often wraps his promotion in packages we overlook. That's why it's so important to obey even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's unseen. You never know which act of obedience will be the key that unlocks your destiny. Don't despise small beginnings. Don't underestimate the power of consistent faithfulness. When you steward the small, you qualify for the extraordinary. God is watching, not to judge, but to reward. And when your promotion comes, when the breakthrough arrives, and people start to notice the favor on your life, you'll know the truth. It started in the quiet place. It started with obedience in the small things. In our fast-paced, instant gratification world, waiting often feels like failure. When doors don't open right away, when prayers seem unanswered, or when progress feels stalled, we're tempted to believe that God has forgotten us, or that we're doing something wrong. But in the kingdom of God, delay is not denial. In fact, divine delays are often a sign that God is positioning you for something greater than you imagine. Waiting is not wasted when God is involved. Every season of delay has a purpose. Sometimes the delay is to protect you from stepping into something before you're ready. Other times it's because the people or places connected to your assignment aren't ready for you. God is not just working on your behalf, he's working all things together for your good. Romans 8:28. Consider Joseph. He had dreams of greatness as a teenager, but his journey to fulfillment included betrayal, slavery, false accusation, and prison. For years, it looked like his dreams were buried, but God was not inactive. Every delay was part of the process that would eventually place Joseph in the palace, not just with authority, but with the wisdom and maturity to sustain it. Delays are often disguised as detours. They test your trust in God's timing. They stretch your faith. They reveal the true posture of your heart. Do you trust God only when things move fast, or do you trust him when nothing seems to be happening? Faith that endures in delay is the faith that is ready for destiny. God uses delay to build your character. While you're waiting, He's refining your motives, strengthening your integrity, and teaching you dependence on Him rather than on outcomes. The longer the wait, the deeper the roots, and deep roots are necessary for sustaining the weight of promotion. Delay also gives clarity. When you're not rushing into the next thing, you have time to hear God more clearly. You learn to pray with precision. You learn to listen without distraction. You begin to see what matters most. And that clarity becomes a foundation for wise decisions when the next level finally comes. When God finally opens the door, what once felt like delay will make perfect sense. You'll realize He was not holding you back. He was setting you up. The job you thought you missed, the relationship that didn't work out, the opportunity that passed you by, it was all part of divine timing. And when the right moment arrives, no force on earth can stop what God has ordained for you. So if you're in a season of waiting, hold on, don't lose heart. Don't let the enemy lie to you and say you've been forgotten. Heaven hasn't paused. Heaven is preparing. What's coming is worth the wait. You are not behind schedule. You are right on God's time. Delay is not God's rejection. It's His strategy. It means He's still working behind the scenes, aligning everything according to His will. Trust Him. Keep walking. Keep praying, keep praising, because the delay you hate may be the protection you need and the preparation that guarantees your extraordinary breakthrough. You may feel ordinary today, overlooked, underestimated, or stuck, but let me remind you, God specializes in taking the ordinary and turning it into the extraordinary for His glory. The disruption you're facing isn't random, it's divine. It's God shaking things up to shift you into your purpose. The isolation you feel, that's not abandonment, it's preparation. God is drawing you closer so He can speak clearly and build deeply. That rapid inner growth, it's not accidental. It's a sign that spiritual promotion is underway. And the resistance, that's proof you're on the right path. The enemy doesn't fight what's not a threat. When you remain obedient in the small things, God opens big doors. What feels insignificant today may be the very platform for your tomorrow. And if it feels like God is taking His time, trust Him. Divine delays are not denials. They are precise pauses designed to protect, prepare, and position you. This journey from ordinary to extraordinary isn't about spotlight or status. It's about surrender. It's about becoming who God created you to be, so that when He moves, there's no doubt the glory belongs to Him. Every great fortune, every meaningful success, every legacy left behind by a masterful man began first as an unseen seed, buried not in soil, but in the subconscious. If you are seeing these signs, it means that seed is beginning to grow. The first sign that you are on the path to wealth is the growing discomfort with mediocrity. You feel it now more than ever. Where once you tolerated the routines of ordinary life, now they disturb you. What once felt acceptable, clocking in without purpose, spending money without direction, surrounding yourself with distractions, now feels unbearable. This is not frustration. This is awakening. The mind is rejecting what no longer fits your identity. It is casting out the habits, the people, the beliefs that kept you poor, not just financially, but spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Wealth begins when you start to say, this is not who I am. That's the first turning point. You're no longer impressed by appearances. You're no longer entertained by small talk. You want strategy. You want substance. You want freedom, not through luck, but through intention. This hunger is a signal that you've crossed a threshold. You are beginning to walk with the posture of a man who has decided, and once a man decides, the universe moves to meet him. Another sign is your intolerance for wasted time. Time, you now understand, is the currency of the wealthy. The poor spend it. The average trade it for pleasure. But the wealthy invest it. Every second becomes a brick in the construction of your future. You no longer live for the weekend, you live for your vision. You have learned that an hour spent building is worth more than a year spent wishing. And because you've seen this truth, you begin protecting your time like treasure. You say no more often now. Not out of arrogance, but alignment, because every no to distraction is a yes to destiny. You've become allergic to idle conversation, unnecessary scrolling, mindless entertainment. You are no longer available to people who drain your spirit and dull your edge. You understand that energy is sacred and attention is wealth. The man who can control his attention will always control his outcomes. And you have begun to master your attention. That is another sign. Where others are reactive, you are intentional. Where others consume, you create. Where others chase, you attract. Because you are no longer scattered, you are focused. And focus is the hammer that breaks the chains of poverty. When a man is focused, he cannot be manipulated. He cannot be distracted by comparison. He walks with direction. And the man with direction is always wealthier than the man with confusion, regardless of how much is in his bank account. You have also started thinking long-term. That's another sign. You no longer live in emotional impulse. You have begun to build systems. You have begun to think in years, not days. You don't just chase income, you build infrastructure. You are building assets. Assets of character, assets of skill, assets of value. You have become the kind of man who says, how will this pay me in 5 years, instead of, how does this make me feel today? And that shift, small as it may seem, is the foundation of empires. You see money differently now. That's a mark of growth. Where once you feared money, now you respect it. You understand that money is a servant, not a master. You understand that money is an amplifier, not a savior. And most importantly, you now see money as the result of value, not just effort. You stopped trading your hours for dollars and started multiplying your value through leverage, through ideas, through systems. That is wealth consciousness. Wealth is not a number, it is a mindset. And your mindset is no longer poor. Poor minds blame, complain, and wait. Wealthy minds create, solve, and act. You stop blaming your background. You stop waiting for permission. You stop looking for signs from the outside. You are now the sign. You are now the one who moves first. You are now the one who says, it starts with me. That is power. And power precedes prosperity. Another sign you are walking the path to wealth. You are now obsessed with growth. You are reading more, learning more, asking deeper questions, listening to conversations that stretch you. You are replacing gossip with mentorship. You are replacing complaints with commitments. You are replacing theory with execution. And that execution, even when imperfect, is producing momentum. Momentum is the greatest asset of the man pursuing wealth. Not speed, momentum. Because speed fades, but momentum builds. Every disciplined day you stack, every focused hour you complete, every hard choice you follow through with adds weight to your character. And weight creates gravity. People feel it. Opportunities feel it. And when the world senses your seriousness, it responds. You are becoming serious now. Not serious in mood, but in mission. You smile more, not because life is easier, but because you are aligned. You no longer panic when things go wrong. You stop making excuses. You don't talk about goals the same way. You walk like someone who expects to win. You carry yourself like a man who has already been there in his mind. You see, every wealthy man I've ever studied had one trait in common. They walked in advance of their results. They didn't wait for success to show up before acting like they were worthy. They moved like the money was already promised. They planned like the vision was already real. And now you do the same. You visualize in the morning. You speak victory over your life. You guard your words because you know words create. Your language is changing. That's a powerful sign. You no longer say, I can't, maybe, or hopefully. You say, I will, I am, and it's done. You've erased doubt from your vocabulary. You've stopped repeating failure stories. You've made your voice a tool for prophecy. You're now narrating your future with precision. And when a man controls his language, he controls his reality. Your circle is changing too. Another sign. You are outgrowing conversations. You are leaving behind comfort-driven communities. Not because you're better, but because you're building something bigger. And the bigger your vision, the tighter your circle must be. You understand that proximity is power and poverty is contagious. So you have begun to place yourself in rooms where excellence is the baseline. You've learned that you don't need to be the smartest man in the room. You just need to be in rooms where smart men are talking. You have become a student of wealth, not just of income, but of principle, of energy, of legacy. You are no longer just looking for how to make money. You're building a philosophy, a system, a code, and that code is carrying you forward. Another sign you are walking the path. Adversity no longer breaks you. It builds you. Where once you folded under pressure, now you grow. You understand that every obstacle is training. You have stopped resenting failure and started learning from it. You don't avoid pain, you alchemize it. You extract the wisdom. You use it as fuel. And because of that, you move through trials with grace. That is the mark of someone being prepared for great wealth. Because wealth requires a strong container. And that container is character. If you are seeing these signs, it means your character is expanding. You are becoming responsible with your word. You are finishing what you start. You are showing up even when the feeling is gone. You are becoming the kind of man who can be trusted with more. And trust always precedes transfer. That's the spiritual law. When you can be trusted, wealth finds you. Because wealth is energy, and energy flows to structure. When you build the structure through habits, vision, service, and consistency, the energy of abundance begins to move. Not because you manipulated the system, but because you became the system. You have become the system now. You are no longer guessing. You are executing. You are no longer hoping. You are building. And that, my friend, is the clearest sign of all. You are on the path to wealth. There is a moment in every man's journey when he begins to feel the shift, not because of what he has, but because of who he is becoming. The shift is quiet. It does not arrive with applause or celebration. It arrives in the form of new standards. It shows up when you begin holding yourself to a higher level even when no one is watching. It reveals itself when you start doing what most won't, because you know your future demands it. If you're seeing these signs, you're no longer chasing money, you're becoming the kind of man money chases. And let me remind you, the man who is truly wealthy never leads with money. He leads with value, he leads with clarity, he leads with purpose. Because he understands that wealth is not pursued, it is attracted. You attract wealth by becoming useful, by becoming reliable, by becoming excellent. Every time you increase your usefulness, your wealth potential multiplies. The world is full of people who want to be rich, but the world is built by people who are useful. Look at your habits now. If you're seeing these signs, it means your habits have begun to align with long-term gain rather than short-term gratification. You no longer eat just for pleasure, you eat for energy. You no longer sleep to escape, you rest to recover. You no longer scroll to pass time, you read to expand. These are not small things. These are indicators that your identity is shifting. And identity is the engine of wealth. When you change how you see yourself, you change what you allow. A poor man justifies bad habits. A rich man builds around discipline. Discipline is not a punishment, it is a privilege. Discipline protects your time. It protects your emotions. It protects your focus. Without it, nothing great can be sustained. With it, everything becomes possible. If your mornings are becoming more structured, your environment more intentional, your calendar more organized, it is no accident. It is the behavior of a man who is preparing for stewardship, not survival. You see, you can't carry wealth if you still think like a man trying to get by. You must begin to think like a man with legacy on his shoulders. The man with legacy doesn't waste time arguing. He doesn't chase cheap validation. He doesn't measure his worth by applause. He is grounded in principle. He understands that real wealth is not just about how much he earns. It's about how much he builds, how much he keeps, and how much he can pass on without the next generation having to start over. Another sign you're on the path to wealth. Your relationship with work has matured. You stopped asking for easy. You've stopped looking for shortcuts. You've stopped idolizing passive income without first becoming actively valuable. You understand that leverage only works when value is present. You now view hard work as a sacred process, not something to escape, but something to master. You no longer see your effort as a grind, you see it as a gateway. Because every repetition, every focused task, every hour of deliberate action compounds into competence, and competence is currency. Wealthy men are masters of something, not everything, but something. They commit, they refine, they simplify, and in that simplicity, they find power. You are no longer distracted by trends. You're not jumping from one idea to the next. You've chosen your vehicle. You've chosen your mission. And now you're digging deep, building depth, because surface level effort produces surface level results. But depth creates dominion. Another sign you're walking the path. You've learned to regulate your emotions. Where you once reacted, now you respond. Where you once panicked, now you pause. Where you once internalized everything, now you investigate. You understand that emotional intelligence is not weakness, it is a weapon. It allows you to move strategically when others are driven by impulse. It allows you to make decisions based on principle, not pressure. And that difference, that internal strength, is what makes you a man who can lead, a man who can build, a man who can multiply. And multiplication is the key, not just of money, but of self. When you begin thinking in terms of multiplying your time, your skill, your vision, your message, your mind has entered the realm of wealth. Because wealthy minds don't just spend, they multiply. Poor minds only consume. They want the next thrill, the next fix, the next dopamine hit. Wealthy minds delay gratification in favor of multiplication. That's why you're studying instead of scrolling. That's why you're building systems instead of escaping stress. That's why you're investing your energy instead of draining it. You're starting to realize that every action you take is either an asset or a liability. Every habit either compounds for you or against you. And because you've seen this truth, you are beginning to make decisions from your future self, not your current feelings. This is the pivot that most never make. The moment when your vision becomes louder than your emotion, when your why outweighs your weakness, when you choose based on outcome, not comfort, that's not just growth, that's preparation for abundance. You are preparing now, not just with goals, but with structure. You've begun to track your inputs, you measure your energy, you audit your time, you track your spending, you track your behavior, not because you are obsessive, but because you are responsible. And responsibility is the foundation of freedom. The man who cannot be responsible cannot be rich. Because wealth will always flee a life of disorder, but wealth is drawn to discipline, to stewardship, to intentionality. Another sign you're on the path. Your self-talk has become stronger. You no longer beat yourself up for every mistake. You learn, you recalibrate, you speak life, you declare truth. You understand that you must lead yourself before you can lead anything else. And that leadership begins in the mirror. Every morning you choose the voice you follow. And now, you are choosing the voice of power. You are building yourself with language that empowers. That is not weakness, that is mastery. You no longer need hype. You've outgrown motivation without movement. You're no longer impressed by flashy lifestyles with no foundation. You respect consistency. You admire humility. You seek wisdom. You would rather be silent and successful than loud and empty. And that internal shift, that depth of character, is a magnet for lasting wealth. Let's talk about the unseen. If you're seeing these signs, you've likely become more sensitive to energy. You can feel when something is out of alignment. You can detect when a person's spirit doesn't match their words. You can sense when an opportunity isn't right, even if it looks good. That sensitivity is not weakness, it's discernment. It means your intuition is sharpening. And the wealthy man always trusts his gut, not out of emotion, but out of awareness. You are aware now, not paranoid, aware of your choices, of your patterns, of your blind spots. And that awareness gives you the power to adjust before the damage is done. That's what separates the man who keeps what he builds from the man who loses it. It's not intelligence, it's awareness. It's the humility to adapt, to ask better questions, to evolve when others become arrogant. If you are seeing this humility in yourself, you are on sacred ground, because the path to wealth is sacred. It is not for everyone. It is not for the crowd. It is for the committed. The man who stays when it's hard, the man who decides when others delay, the man who sacrifices short-term approval for long-term abundance. That's you now. You don't just want more, you are becoming more. Your life may not reflect it fully yet. You may still be in the early stages. You may still be climbing, but inside you already know you are different now. Your mind is sharper. Your intentions are purer. Your behavior is bolder. You're no longer the same, and you're never going back. That is wealth. Not just having, becoming. And every sign you're seeing now is proof. You are becoming the kind of man who can handle wealth, manage wealth, multiply wealth, and pass on wealth, not just of money, but of mind. And that, my friend, is priceless. If you're still seeing the signs, and more importantly, if you're still living them, then let me tell you something few will say out loud. Wealth is no longer a possibility for you, it's an inevitability. Why? Because you've already become the kind of man wealth was designed to serve. You no longer need to chase riches like a beggar, hoping for a blessing. You've earned the right to expect prosperity, not through entitlement, but through alignment. Your thoughts, your decisions, your actions, and your standards now reflect abundance at the core. Look at the way you now treat your mornings, not as a rush of obligation, but as sacred ground. You rise with purpose, not panic. You prepare, not react. You lead your day instead of waiting to be led by it. And every day that begins in intention is a seed of wealth planted. Compound that intention over months, years, and decades, and no force in the world can stop what's coming to you. Wealth is not for the scattered, it flows to the deliberate. And you, my friend, have become a man of deliberate purpose. Even your goals have changed. Where once you chased status, now you pursue significance. Where once you wanted money to feel powerful, now you know power is the ability to be in control of yourself. You've discovered that real freedom isn't about buying more, it's about needing less. And from that posture you've stepped into mastery. Because the man who needs nothing is the most dangerous man alive. He cannot be manipulated, he cannot be distracted, he cannot be bought. And because of that, wealth is now drawn to him naturally. You've learned that the wealthiest people are not the ones who hoard, but the ones who create. You've stepped into the mindset of value creation. You don't ask, what can I get? You ask, what can I give that multiplies? This is what separates the wealthy from the hopeful. Hopeful people wish. Wealthy people serve. They understand that money follows value, and value flows from a refined mind and a sharpened skill set. You are sharpening now. Every day you think deeper. Every day you solve faster. Every day you speak with more clarity. That is the evidence of a man preparing for magnitude. Let's not forget the internal shift that precedes every financial breakthrough. Identity. If your identity has changed, your reality has already begun to change. You no longer say, I'm trying. You say, I'm becoming. You don't say, maybe one day. You say, it's already done, I'm catching up to it. You walk like it's done, you work like it's done, you plan like it's done. And that inner shift is what the world responds to. Energy doesn't lie. When your mind is made up, reality bends to match. Even in silence you are building. You no longer need constant feedback to know you're on track. You've developed the habit of showing up even when no one notices. You've divorced yourself from the need for approval. You've become your own accountability. And that self-respect, that integrity, that's what wealthy men are made of. Wealth without character is short-lived. But wealth built on identity, intention, and internal power, that kind of wealth outlasts generations. Let me tell you this. It is no longer a matter of if, It is a matter of when. The man you're becoming is inevitable. Because you no longer make decisions from your current limitations, you make them from your future self. You don't ask, what can I afford? You ask, what does the man I'm becoming choose? You've stopped budgeting for your fears. You've started investing in your faith. You've made every dollar a soldier, every task a message, every conversation an opportunity. And because of that, wealth has no choice but to enter. You now speak in full sentences. You communicate with conviction. You own your time. You protect your energy. You move with rhythm, not rush. You think ahead. You ask questions. You no longer wait for life to assign you value. You assign it to yourself. And when a man knows his value, the world responds in kind. You don't beg for worth, you walk in it. You've made peace with solitude. Where once you feared being alone, now you cherish it. Because solitude has become your workshop, your training ground, your vision board, your altar of refinement. The man who can sit in silence and build in the dark is the man who can handle abundance in the light. Most people fear silence because it forces them to face themselves. But you faced yourself, and you didn't flinch. You grew, and that growth is priceless. You've stopped outsourcing your discipline. You've stopped making others responsible for your habits. You no longer need a reminder to do what you said you'd do. You honor your word even in private. And when your private behavior aligns with your public declaration, that is wealth. Because true wealth is congruence. No split personality, no double standard, one mind, one mission, one man. You've developed vision. Not the kind sold on posters, but the kind written into your spirit. You see your future before it's visible. You speak life into dry places. You build when there's no audience. You plant seeds when others are complaining about the weather. And because of that, you will reap what others only dream about. Not by luck, not by inheritance, but by law. The law of cause and effect. The law of belief. The law of responsibility. The law of mental clarity. If you are truly walking this path, there is one more sign that cannot be ignored. You've become impossible to unseat. You are no longer shaken by delay. You are no longer discouraged by rejection. You are no longer broken by setbacks. Why? Because you've trained your mind to interpret all pain as preparation. You've mastered the ability to extract profit from adversity. You are an alchemist now. You turn resistance into results, loss into leverage, delay into direction. You've made excellence your default. Not something you do when you feel like it, but who you are even when no one's looking. You've made integrity your compass. You've made purpose your currency. You no longer talk about goals, you talk about systems. Because systems produce, goals inspire, but systems build. And you, my friend, are building every single day. You're no longer chasing big wins, you're stacking small ones. Because you know now the compound effect of daily discipline will beat every flash-in-the-pan success story. You're not building for next week, you're building for your legacy. You're not here to impress, you're here to last. And that mindset, that long-game posture is what makes wealth inevitable. So I'll say it again. If you're seeing these signs, you're not on the wrong track. You're not late, you're not lost, you're being forged. And everything you're becoming now, the habits, the posture, the clarity, the confidence, these are not accidents. These are confirmations. Confirmations that you're walking in alignment with the man you were always meant to become. That man is already inside of you. He's the one who rises early, who studies instead of complains, who executes instead of hesitates, who speaks truth, lives truth, builds truth. He doesn't just wear success, he embodies it. And every day, that man is growing stronger, sharper, bolder, freer. You don't owe the world an explanation. You don't owe anyone proof. You owe yourself follow-through. You owe yourself consistency. You owe your future family the version of you who didn't give up when it got hard. You owe your calling a man who answered it without excuse. So stand tall. Walk firm.
Keep building. The world may not notice today, but wealth has already taken notice.